Welcome to the Grand Theft World podcast, hosted and sponsored by GrandTheftWorld.com. It's episode 87. It's July 3rd, 2022. We're going to be here for several hours tonight, unpacking the last week of news, covering any censored content that you might need to have a little awareness of what's going on. For instance, we got a story this week about Ghislaine Maxwell. No, she didn't Epstein herself, but she did get 20 years, and we still don't know who the clients were. So it sounds kind of like justice, but when you look at the situation, it's not really justice for that situation. There's more to be learned about that.
Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and it is official. Ghislaine Maxwell has received 20 years. Now this was not, it was about half after they shaved off what they said they were going to, of I believe the 50 plus years she could have gotten. And to me, that is extremely upsetting because, I mean, if you're going to go full show trial, in which this was in many ways, right? We can't discount that eventually at least Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were arrested, put into public view. Epstein twice has to kill himself. I mean, again, putting this case more into question, more into public view. And then you got to remember, it was where in the world is Ghislaine Maxwell? After that, took about a year to find her. And then once they did, we had a very limited scope trial. But she has been serving prison time. And there is no doubt that these people were high-level ghouls and minions of the predator class on many levels. You have, of course, the aspect of trafficking in these young girls, right? Then you also have the blackmail and intelligence aspects that are often not discussed. And that's what's the most upsetting. I see so many people going on and on and on about the client list. Really, the client list. Now, we will get into that, but forget about the client list for a second. Let's talk about the binders and hard drives and CDs that we will show you in this broadcast that pictures of were put into evidence in this case, and yet the actual content of what was inside all of these materials, which as a tech guy, guys, could have been vast via video, especially when you're talking about what would be at the time SD video in most cases. Anything that was during the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. You know, that Wexner mansion we're not supposed to talk about. Wexner, exonerated. So we're going to show Annie Farmer's reaction to this because, look, there were a lot of people that thought all of this talk of an island and high-level people having sex with children was fairy tales and unicorns, right? It was imagination land. When in fact, it is darker than most people can imagine. So, you know, at the very least, Ghislaine Maxwell also gave her statement at the end and said that she hopes that her harsh sentence will bring them some kind of a solace. It was almost a tongue-in-cheek, all right? But, you know, Ghislaine Maxwell is a disgusting person. Annie Farmer is, of course, Maria Farmer's younger sister. And she was assaulted, you know, again, underage, groomed by these people. Maria Farmer went to the FBI and the NYPD in the late 90s, 96, and nothing was done. Think about that. This went on for decades and decades. You know, the horrific things that were still going on while this man was embroiled in the Palm Beach scandal have come to light, and they are nightmarish as well. We've covered them ad nauseum on this channel.
Also coming up, we have the death this past week. Rest in peace, Dr. Zelenko. He was 48 years old. He's done a lot of work in the past couple years to help people assuage and get early treatment from the symptoms of the pandemic. And he died of cancer a couple days ago.
I started the Zelenko Freedom Foundation because I'm dying. It seems. I've been here before, so I can't say for sure. God has played ping pong with my soul, but at this point, my health situation has seriously changed. Basically need a wheelchair to move around and need help taking a shower, preparing food, going to the bathroom. So as I look at this stage of my life, and my body is failing me, legacy becomes essential. I think life is much bigger than any one individual. And if we could set up systems in place that can propagate principles of truth, of love, of courage, to do what's right, not what's easy. I think that's a worthy use of someone's last energies. I want the epitome of truthful messaging, journalism, through various platforms, whether it's social media, regular media, print media, irrelevant, word of mouth, in houses of worship. I want the truth like a mantra propagated. I'm presenting to you a different perspective than what you've been told.
Also, our friend Dr. Fauci, he's like all vaxxed up. He's all boosted up. He's had COVID twice now in the past 2 months.
It's not adequate to only consider the short-term adverse events as related to the vaccine. We must acknowledge that the COVID-19 genetic injections cause far more harm than good and provide zero benefit relative to risk for the young and healthy. They do not reduce COVID-19 infection, which is treatable and not terminal. Furthermore, the most recent data demonstrates that you are more likely to become infected or have disease or even death if you've been vaccinated compared to the unvaccinated people. This is shocking to hear, but it is what the data are showing us. The data now show that these experimental gene therapy treatments can damage your children as well as yourself. They can damage your heart, your brain, your reproductive tissue, and your lungs. This can include permanent damage and disablement of your immune system.
Well, Fauci has COVID again. He's experiencing a rebound case after taking Pfizer's treatment drug Paxlovid. Here he is talking about it.
Thank you so much. I remember the last time that we interviewed you, you told us that you were staying away from the White House Correspondents' Dinner. You said that given your age, you felt it was potentially risky. And unfortunately, just weeks later, you ended up getting COVID yourself. Are you doing any better now?
Well, yes, I am, but I've had an interesting course that I think is becoming more and more typical the more clinical experience we get. I turned positive about 2 weeks ago with very minimal symptoms. When they increased, given my age, I went on Paxlovid for 5 days, and I felt really quite well, just a bit of rhinorrhea and fatigue. And after I finished the 5 days of Paxlovid, I reverted to negative on an antigen test for 3 days in a row. And then on the 4th day, just to be absolutely certain, I tested myself again, and I reverted back to positive by the antigen test. So it was sort of what people are referring to as a Paxlovid rebound. And then over the next day or so, I started to feel really poorly, much worse than in the first go around. So I went back on Paxlovid, and right now I am on my 4th day of a 5-day course of my second course of Paxlovid. And fortunately, I feel reasonably good. I mean, I'm not completely without symptoms, but I certainly don't feel acutely ill.
Okay, so he caught COVID, had minor symptoms. Then his symptoms started to get worse, so he started a round of Paxlovid. He then felt better and tested negative for a few days, and then suddenly he tested positive. And this is where it gets interesting, because if you remember, we talked about Paxlovid's rebound COVID problem about 6 weeks ago after late night host Stephen Colbert also came down with a rebound case. And at the time, Pfizer and experts were claiming it was very rare. And in Stephen Colbert's case, the rebound wasn't as bad as the initial round of COVID. So there were questions about whether or not a rebound case was even truly COVID or whether or not people were contagious. At least that's what they were claiming. But people online having real world experiences were saying otherwise. People were claiming it was way more common than just rare, and that the second wave of the virus was often worse. But those stories were dismissed. Now we have Fauci telling this same story. And I'll give him props for being transparent about his symptoms and telling us the truth. But those props are short-lived, because here comes Fauci with another one of his noble lies. According to the New York Times, Fauci says he believes Paxlovid kept him out of the hospital, even though he tested positive again. The article reads, Fauci sought on Wednesday to discourage doubts about the antiviral drug Paxlovid after disclosing that he had suffered what appeared to be a rebound of COVID-19 after taking a 5-day course of the pills. Paxlovid did what it was supposed to do, Dr. Fauci, 81, said in an interview, saying that he believed that the treatment made by Pfizer kept him out of the hospital when he first tested positive for the virus on June 15th. He added that he thought the drug also reduced the severity of his initial symptoms. So here's Fauci telling us there's no issue with Pfizer's treatment drug because he wants to discourage doubts. Just tell us the truth. Don't try to tell us stories to keep our hopes up in Pfizer's pocketbook lined. The fact is, he had a rebound case that was worse than his initial bout of symptoms. Studies show rebound cases of COVID are, in fact, very, very rare in people who don't take this treatment drug. An initial recent study surrounding the drug shows rebound cases are not rare. In fact, in one study of a handful of people, several of the rebound cases were within one family group. And how can he say it was Paxlovid that kept him out of the hospital? He's taken 4 doses of the COVID vaccine. He's been telling us it's the vaccine that will keep us safe and out of the hospital. So which is it? How are people supposed to continue trusting anything Fauci says when it was 2 doses, then 3, then 4, then add a round of Paxlovid, then add a second round and still end up sick? Granted, he's not dead and he's 81, so I guess there's that. Fact is, they speak with authority about knowing what these drugs and vaccines do and don't do, and then they persuade the population and even turn us against one another. And in reality, it's all still very much unknown. Take a look at Dr. Peter Hotez. He's a medical expert who appears regularly on MSNBC. We've had him here on Rising. He also experienced one of the supposed very rare cases of Paxlovid rebound. Here's his tweet thread about the experience. Well, thought COVID was over, finished 5 days of Paxlovid, felt well, 2 negative antigen tests, 5 days later up this AM, lots of rhinorrhea, sore throat, antigen tests screaming positive. So either this post-Paxlovid relapse is real, something unique to BA.212, although can't confirm, or something. Well, we'll eventually figure this out, but still a puzzle. I don't feel that terrible. It's like a bad cold, still doing Zooms, interviews, writing. Will a second course of Paxlovid help? Not much of a roadmap. Until I figure this out, watching Respect, Aretha Franklin movie. Great music. Thank goodness for our COVID vaccinations. I can only imagine if we didn't have them. Well, first of all, he's admitting here that there are many unknowns and they're working to solve a puzzle. It isn't settled science. Secondly, if the vaccines work, why even take Paxlovid? Lastly, do we trust and follow data and science? Because the fact is, the clinical trials that allowed Paxlovid authorization for use were done on unvaccinated, high-risk patients, not 4-time jabbed Stephen Colbert, Anthony Fauci, or Peter Hotez. These men are taking the drug off-label without any clinical data to back up its use for them, and yet Fauci doesn't want to dissuade people from using it. It may very well be true that the rebound cases do not happen in the unvaccinated who take Paxlovid, the group it was designed for and tested on. But many people are taking it who've been vaccinated over and over. Do they trust the vaccines or not? Do they follow science and the data or not? Because at this point, the answer to both of these questions seems to be no. The real response is these guys are throwing the kitchen sink at COVID, and they have no idea which thing that saved them, if any of them at all. They lambasted and ridiculed others who were willing to try anything and everything. And apparently it's only okay to experiment with off-label drugs when it's promoted by big science and big pharma.
And then, of course, it's Independence Day here in America. We celebrated on July 4th. It was about fighting against the British Empire once upon a time. We're going to look into that story. But most importantly, in terms of this production, we started production on July 4th, 2009 for the Tragedy and Hope online magazine, which morphed into the community, which led to eventually this podcast. So we're celebrating an anniversary tonight. Be sure to stick around, don't stick out. That's not good these days. You want to blend in, but stick around until midnight. And once it turns Independence Day, we've got something very special, something we've never done in the past 13 years. And it's going to go on starting tonight for the next week.
It's tough.
What's your sanity worth in this situation? Because you're going crazy in this situation because you don't have a plan yet. You're not in action. You don't know the people you need to talk to. That's what autonomy helps people do. Figure out that you're stuck. You ask for help. People come in with some ideas. Now you got a plan of action that was better than no plan at all, or whatever you made up on your first draft, and you're headed toward the goal. The faster and more times we can do that in a year, the more progress we're going to make on anything we're trying to achieve as far as freedom or economic balance. They're trying to dumb you down. They're trying to steal your freedom. I'm saying, don't give the pricks the satisfaction. You can learn how to learn anything. You can go freely about your life, writing your own script, learning what you need to know as you go. They weren't born experts either. They just had access to some tools and methods they have deprived the rest of us. And I think I would like to see what the game looks like if it's an equal playing field, at least from a learning perspective. We don't ever have the resources, but we can be inventive, creative, and use our ingenuity to create things that they haven't even comprehended yet. And freedom will always have that advantage. They're trying to squash something. They're trying to extinguish something they don't yet understand.
Yeah, they're trying to make population malleable for their whims and for their end goals, which we see what that's leading to. Population reduction, complete technocratic control grid systems, the combining through a transhumanist ideal of man and machine, the loss of reproduction, the central massive depopulation, population collapse, as I think even Elon Musk of all people, and technocrat himself, has stated we're on the precipice of. So it's just a recognition that a very small few, I think it was of all people, Ben Shapiro is saying, you should be very concerned that a small group of people who think they're smarter than you have planned out everything and have the idea of how systems should run. Yeah, that's not how systems have ever been built. The way our systems have been built through trial and error of human interaction.
Themselves are built.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So housekeeping, LD, can you pin that link for that $1,000 offer? Good for the next 7 days in all the chats. And we'll put it in Grand Theft World newsletter this week that goes out. So if you're a GTW member and you want that, you can have that. You get the scaled down version of autonomy. You don't get it real time, but you get what we just finished last week or 2 weeks ago. You get access to listen to other people ask questions, but you don't ask questions yourself. You get to see the value that all these people they got out of the direct exercises. So, if you did a similar exercise, you could get similar value for yourself, right? So it's not watered down so much that you won't get the value or what you need to know out of it. It's just not accelerated enough to cost the standard tuition. So people can't take offers I don't make. I put it out there for anyone who got 3 hours into the show. They get it. Also, we have high gas prices forever is a story. It's some phrasing that came from the guy formerly known as the vice president, this guy Biden, who says high gas prices forever because it's part of defending the liberal world order. And until Ukraine beats Russia, you're going to have high gas prices. So we'll see what people think about that.
Now, this past Thursday, the Biden administration officially made a very eye-opening statement, which I think the New York Post perfectly represented on their cover this Saturday, with a picture of Joe Biden looking haggard and confused as ever, dressed up as Uncle Sam with a fuel pump pointed directly at you, saying, quote, "I want you to pay higher gas prices," as Biden's economic advisor came out on CNN this Thursday, Brian Dees, and said publicly that U.S. families should suffer high gas prices in order to, quote, protect the liberal world order. Statements that, of course, trended shortly after on Twitter, but this is a direct response after CNN asked him, quote, "What do you say to those families that say, listen, we can't afford to pay $4.85 a gallon for months, if not years?" This is, of course, a major cabinet member of the Biden administration that was the global head of sustainable investment at BlackRock, a major connected establishment government company that, of course, is gobbling up everything while everyone is just suffering to survive. He, of course, went to Yale, Harvard, lived an extremely privileged life out of the basic reality of everyone else that's struggling financially, as, of course, the super rich are telling you the price you're paying right now is absolutely worth it for their political gains and aspirations. You suffering, you barely making ends meet, their New World Order is, of course, going to be prioritized, and you will have to pay the pound of flesh. You will have to give your blood, sweat, and tears. You will have to sacrifice so the super rich could continue their, quote, liberal world order. Absolutely out of touch comments, as of course the pain and havoc created by this administration, by their cronies at BlackRock, have been destroying the fabric of life for many human beings, innocent human beings, the poorest amongst us, that are being taken advantage of by these politicians that are making the situation that much worse for you. Now, of course, this BlackRock shill working at the Biden administration also said that the president and his administration is, quote, doing everything in their power to blunt those price increases and, quote, bring those prices down, and that's an absolute lie. This administration has time and time again said that this transition that they're forcing everyone through is worth the price of high gas. They praised this transition. They have created economic moves within this administration that have stopped the domestic energy exploration and production here domestically, which would ease prices of energy, which would ease prices of everything else. When we look at the price of everything going up, it's directly correlated with the price of energy, with the price of gas going up. Why is it going up? Because there's not enough. The Middle Eastern countries, along with Russia, are profiting off of high gas prices. This, as the Biden administration just moments ago, not so long ago, canceled oil and gas leases in Alaska and the Gulf of Mexico, preventing companies from producing it domestically, while, of course, depending in on Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, mass producing it, shipping it here for a premium at cost. Greta Thunberg and all the green climate change environmentalists approve of that policy because we're not doing it here in the United States. We're just making the Middle East do it. And again, that policy is absolutely nonsensical. It's ridiculous. We're dealing with an energy crisis. We're dealing with a financial crisis, which could be alleviated if it wasn't for the federal government standing in the way, deliberately making this situation that much worse. And this situation is being made that much worse, admittedly, by this administration that is cheering on how great all of this is. It's also important to note here that Germany also has implemented very similar policies. They have shut down their nuclear facilities, even though they provide a lot of clean energy. Germany just found 2.3 trillion cubic meters of natural gas stored in its shale rock, enough to last them for over 20 plus years, but they refuse to use it. Electricity rates in Germany went up 6 times. Imagine electricity energy going up 6 times than usual. That means the price of consumer goods will go up 6 times as much. This, as people in Germany are preparing for a major energy crisis, as of course wood-burning stoves, dry firewood, have sold out completely, and this is during the beginning of the summer months. Imagine what's going to happen when winter hits. And all of this, a part of course, the Build Back Better, Great Reset policies that, of course, are being promoted, touted, and pushed on and shoved down your throat by the billionaire globalist elites that, of course, are profiting off of these moves. Who benefits off of this? Well, individuals like Bill Gates. Bill Gates, that was, by the way, just granted legal authority to buy another 2,100 acres in North Dakota, despite breaking local rules and protests from local residents, as of course the billionaires are buying up land or buying out houses in record numbers. Barack Obama has a lot of beachfront properties in Martha's Vineyard in Hawaii. This, as of course he's warning about the sea levels rising. Yeah, hilarious. To the point where even other billionaires that were enriched by this current system are complaining about what's happening right now, as even Jeff Bezos has blasted Biden for making this situation that much worse for everyone.
What makes autonomy uniquely empowering? Autonomy is a self-help course unlike any other. Over the course of our 12-week program, you'll experience weekly live lectures from Richard Grove, specifically designed to equip you with the skills you need to set yourself free. Free from the learned helplessness taught in our schools, free from the dependence on a corrupt system that serves only to uphold the rich, free from the structure of your 9-to-5 if that's your prerogative. Plus, you'll enter into a community of like-minded individuals who are pursuing the same freedom you are, and who'll support you and learn alongside you every step of the way. A lifetime of community and the tools to live however you want. We can't wait to meet you. Learn more at getautonomy.info.